Got to get it in. Does to Smith. Jabari for three and the win. Yeah! He got it!
We are here to Field Rocks News. This is the Rocks Field Podcast. And breaking news, the Houston Rockets. Let's get right into it. The Houston Rockets have finally pulled off the trade. The trade has been talked about for, it seemed like, all the way back since the trade deadline, middle of the year, but definitely all offseason has dominated the majority of the talk outside the NBA Finals. The Houston Rockets and the Phoenix Suns have finally came to agreement. The deal is Kevin Durant coming to Houston for Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, the number 10 pick this season, which they got from the Phoenix Suns in a trade right before the trade deadline, and 5 future second-round picks. And in this show, of course, I wanted to give my quick thoughts on it. Of course, throughout the week, we're going to have a lot more to talk about when it comes to this. But I just wanted to give my quick thoughts on this, how the potential starting lineup is going to look. I'm talking about a little about that at the end of the show, but just kind of get my initial thoughts on Kevin Durant coming to the Houston Rockets. We have been talking about it, like I said, for weeks now, but now that it's actual reality. When it comes down for the Houston Rockets, the player you are getting a 36. Let's just talk a little bit about the pros and cons. First, let's just talk about the cons. He is 36. He'll be 37 for the season start. He does have a injury history in the last few seasons. He missed the majority of the last part of last season with an ankle injury that, if I'm not mistaken, he actually suffered against the Houston Rockets, funny enough. So his last game with the Phoenix Suns was against the Houston Rockets, and his next game will be for the Houston Rockets. Like I said, you are dealing with that. You're also dealing with what you gave up in the trade. So now you kind of have a hole at the shooting guard position. I know some people are going to say, well, Cam Whitmore can fill in that spot, or maybe an Amen Thompson, but that's a totally different dynamic when you put an Amen Thompson at the shooting guard position. But again, we'll talk a little bit more about the starting lineup, but you are leaving a hole with that. Yeah, you're losing Dillon Brooks, but Amen Thompson is really going to take his spot anyway when it comes down to it. He took over as a primary defender in the lineup. So that's not really a huge loss. Even though Dillon Brooks did shoot 39% from three-point range last year. His defense, his one-on-one defense has slipped a little bit, but you do have to fill in that hole as well. So you have 2 spots you're going to fill in that starting lineup. So that's another one of the cons. Another thing to keep in mind is just, will it work out? You really don't know, because the last 2 teams Kevin Durant's been at, Brooklyn, that's a different situation where they dealt with injuries to James Harden and Kyrie Irving. That's why they didn't necessarily work out there. But then he forced his way to the Phoenix Suns with 2 former All-Stars in Bradley Beal and Devin Booker. And we saw that didn't necessarily work out, especially last season, where they completely tanked. At times, it just seemed like they just gave up and wasn't really playing that hard. So you have to think, okay, how is he going to fit in with the rest of Rockets? I mean, Fred VanVleet is pretty easy to fit in with, because really he's just more of a facilitator at this point. But you have to figure out how he's going to work with players like Amen Thompson, how he's going to commingle with alperensengun. But at the end of the day, Kevin Durant is a very smart basketball player. He has a very high basketball IQ, so I don't think that would necessarily be a problem. And also, he respects Ime Udoka from his time in Brooklyn as well. So I think that he'll be willing to buy into it, and we'll hear a little bit more about it. But I have to believe that Houston was probably his preferred destination all along. Considering what the Rockets bring to the table compared to the other teams in the Miami Heat, who barely got into the play-in in the Eastern Conference, the weak Eastern Conference, and then also San Antonio Spurs, which are the other team that was named at times. They didn't even make the play-in game. Teams like Toronto, same thing. They didn't even make the playoffs last year. So if he's looking at all the teams that were vying for his services, the Houston Rockets probably make the most sense. I know Minnesota was also mentioned, but it seemed like Kevin Durant didn't have any interest at all. I don't think it really had to do necessarily with the team. It probably had more to do with, let's be honest, the state taxes and the fact that it was a post he made a long time ago about not liking the cold in Minnesota. So something he definitely does not have to worry about here in Houston. So those are a few of the cons. Like I said, as the week go on, we're going to get down into the actual depths of the actual game plan on what the Rockets can do with the Kevin Durant. But some of the pros are, of course, that he's one of the best shooters of all time, definitely one of the best mid-range shooters, maybe the best mid-range shooter in NBA history. Even though he is getting up in age, he still had a really good year as far as when it came to steals and blocks. He still actually gets into the passing lanes. He's still a decent shot blocker. He's not necessarily going to be, 2-3 blocks a game, but he's still a decent shot blocker at times. And of course, you can kind of move him anywhere in the offense, and he'll still be able to get his own shot. He's not necessarily going to be used as a spot up shooter, but he can be when Alperen Sengun's in the post. You're definitely going to fear him more than you're going to fear a Jalen Green or even a Dillon Brooks, who's had a really good year last year. But I don't think teams were necessarily like, oh God, we got to guard Dillon Brooks on the 3-point line. Kevin Durant, there's always going to be eyes on him. And ultimately that's going to help Alperen Sengun. That's going to help Amen Thompson actually, have more space to operate inside of the paint. And another thing that many people may not talk a lot about is just having a Kevin Durant, a future Hall of Famer, one of the best players, 75 best players of all time, the most decorated Olympian in USA basketball history. Having him in the locker room every single day, not to say that Dillon Brooks was a bad player in the locker room, because he absolutely was. He was actually complete opposite. But having someone like that where you can learn from every single day, I mean, that makes a big difference. That's something you may not talk about a lot, but that makes a big difference, especially for a player like Jabari Smith, who is similar in body type. When coming out of college, he was kind of seen as a person that can shoot from anywhere on the court. But to have a player like Kevin Durant now that you can learn from every single day, not just during summer workouts, but every single day, that definitely is going to make a difference. And just also, like I said, you can't understate or overstate how big of a factor it is that Kevin Durant's basketball IQ. He just knows how to play the game of basketball. So this is, for instance, in this series against Golden State, do you think there's anything Golden State could have did that would have took Kevin Durant out of his game? It doesn't really matter what you would have tried against Kevin Durant. He would have been able to come up with a counter. He's pretty much seen it all, done it all. So when you're getting in high-profile games, even during the regular season, when you're going against really tough teams like Oklahoma City Thunder, teams that really play hard-nosed defense, and especially into the playoffs, that's when having a Kevin Durant is really going to stand out. Because throughout the year, he may miss some games. He may not play back-to-back games. That may actually go into the negative or the con portion of what I was talking about. But overall, you're still going to be able to see a player like Kevin Durant really shine when you're really going up against those tough teams like the Oklahoma City Thunders of the world, Minnesota Timberwolves, teams that gave the Rockets a lot of trouble, even the Golden State Warriors, teams that gave the Rockets a lot of trouble in the past. So that's definitely a pro that you're going to have to keep in mind when you're talking about a Kevin Durant. So like I said, it's definitely more pros than cons, because ultimately the Rockets had all the leverage in this. And this is something I've been preaching from day one. There's no reason for the Rockets to overpay. There's no way I would have gave up Jalen and Jabari or Jalen and Tari. There's just no way I would have gave up those players in that trade package. And the Rockets didn't have to do that. Giving up Dillon does kind of hurt, just because like how good he did shoot last year. And I think people don't realize how good of a person he was in the locker room, and he did a lot for the community as well. So I don't want to, not mention any of those things when you talk about Dillon. But end of the day, you also have to look towards the future, even bringing in Kevin Durant. So let's say Kevin Durant, for some reason, doesn't stick around after this year. I find it hard to believe. I don't think the Rockets would have made this trade without having some extension plan in place already. They may have to wait a little bit, because if he waits a month or two, he can get even more money, and that may be the plan. But let's just say Kevin Durant only stays around for two years. You still got Jabari, even though I know you still got to re-sign him and Tari. So that's a whole nother story. But ultimately, you'll still have Jabari or Tari or both of them. You still have Amen Thompson. You still have Alperen Sengun. You still have Reed Shepherd. You still have young guys that you can still build around. So it's not like the Rockets just gave up everything like some of these teams did when they traded, like Brooklyn did when they traded for James Harden, or like other teams that did when they traded for big name stars. The Rockets didn't have to do that. The Rockets had a package in mind. I got to believe they stuck to that package and told Phoenix, you either can take it or leave it. And Phoenix said, okay. They probably went to Durant. Durant said, this is the team I want to play for. And they're like, well, it's better than losing them for nothing. So they did the only thing they could do when it came to the Rockets, because the Rockets weren't going to give them anything else. The Rockets could have just stayed pat, added players onto what they already had, and they probably could have won more games than they did last season. So The Rockets did exactly what they should have did. Rafael Stone did a great job of not giving up too much. They didn't even give Phoenix any more of their picks. They didn't give them 2027 pick. They didn't give them 2029 pick. So the Rockets ultimately, that was probably the best package they could have did. Would you have liked to not have given up Dillon Brooks as well? Yes. But at the end of the day, the Rockets feel like the window is open. I think a lot of this has to do with what they're seeing from the NBA Finals and the playoffs. As great as Thunder looked during the Oklahoma City Thunder looked during the regular season, they can push the 7 games from an Indiana team that nobody thought had a chance to even get out of the Eastern Conference, let alone pushing the NBA Finals seven games. So if you're the Rockets, you're looking at the landscape in the NBA. You're like, why not? If we go get Kevin Durant, why couldn't we be the team in the finals next season? There's no dominant teams in the NBA anymore. There's just not. There's a lot of parity in the NBA because of the second apron that's causing a lot of teams to not want to go too far, and to definitely not want to even go into the second apron to begin with. So a lot of teams are scared to make moves. So there's a lot of parity in the NBA. So if you're the Rockets, you see that window open, you feel like, okay, let's just go make that move now. Let's see what happens. And there's no reason why we shouldn't be competing for a championship next year. So going on the days of just being happy making the playoffs, going on the days of just happy winning 50 games. Now the Rockets are in the mode of championship or bust. Let's just be perfectly honest with you. Because if you're bringing in Kevin Durant, Durant's not going to be around for 4 or 5 more seasons. And even if he is, he's not going to be anywhere near where he is right now. He's already 36 years old. So if you're the Houston Rockets, you're doing this as, I want to win a championship now. I mean, we talked about phases with the Rockets, the rebuilding phase 1, phase 2, just getting to the playoffs. Now we're probably accelerate to phase 4 or 5 at this point. The Rockets are at this point looking to win a championship. They're not looking to just be a good team that's a feel-good story. So that's where the Rockets are right now. And just kind of wrap up this quick show. Like I said, I'm going to have more shows throughout the week. We're probably going to be having a Kevin Durant press conference at some point. I don't know exactly when, but whenever they do, I'll be out there to bring you that press conference for sure. But one thing that's going to have to be talked about is, are the Rockets going to make more moves? Because right now your starting lineup is kind of up in the air. You definitely know Fred VanVleet is going to be starting. Amen Thompson is going to be starting. Alperen Sengun is going to be starting. Kevin Durant's going to be starting. But who's taking that other spot? I have to believe it's Jabari Smith. I think they go Amen at the 2 for now. That's the kind of tricky part. Like, how do you want to play that? But I feel like they go Amen at the 2 for now. And then you have to kind of figure out, what are you going to do with Jabari, and what are you going to do? Who's going to play? I don't think it really matters who plays power forward, small forward at the end of the day. But that's who you got to figure out with that. Because I just don't think they're going to – Cam is at the point with the coaching staff within the organization where they feel comfortable with him starting next season. I just don't see it. I don't think they feel comfortable enough with Reed starting. So, honestly, what I think happens is I think the Rockets make other moves. Another thing to keep in mind, when you're bringing in Kevin Durant, guess what? Other players that are free agents are possibly going to want to come to the Rockets for the veteran minimum. You may be able to bring players in at a lot bigger of a discount than you were beforehand. So I just don't think the Rockets are done. So I don't think you can really say what their starting lineup can be. But if you're looking at it right now, what I would do, I would start Jabari, put Amen at the shooting guard, and then see how it plays out. But I just think the Rockets are going to be making more moves. The Rockets still have other players on the roster they possibly could trade. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they are going to trade anybody, but you still have a Cam Whitmore who definitely had some problems with the Rockets last season that they may be looking to move on from. So the Rockets still can make some other moves to possibly try to bring in another guard. Because to me, you have to bring in another guard. You can't go into the season with just Reed. Cam is really more of a small forward anyway. He's not really a shooting guard. So you're talking about Reed. You're talking about Fred VanVleet. That's really all your guards you have right now. So I have to believe the Rockets aren't going to be done yet. Hell, they may even be making a move now while I'm talking, but who knows? But I just think if you're thinking about it right now, the players they have right now, Jabari will make the most sense putting the starting lineup, and then you just have to figure it out. Like, oh man, as a shooting guard, is he able to play the shooting guard? Do you move Fred to the shooting guard and have Amen? I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out. And like I said, we're going to have more shows. I'll be bringing on try to bring on some people out from Phoenix so they can talk a little bit about Kevin Durant. But we're definitely going to have some more shows throughout the week. I'll probably be on Fox 26 a couple of times this week talking about Kevin Durant as well. But definitely kind of recap the breaking news. Kevin Durant has come to the Houston Rockets for Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, number 10 pick this season, and 5 second-round picks. So buckle up, Rockets fans. This next season is going to be a crazy season. And I'm going to be here to bring you all of it, all the press conferences. Definitely training camp. Every year I'll be out at training camp, media day. Any type of events that Kevin Durant is going to be part of, I will be out at, bringing you all the latest. So definitely let me know down in the comments, what do you think of this trade? Do you feel like the Rockets gave up too much? Do you feel like the Rockets fleeced the Phoenix Suns? Do you have any concerns about bringing in a 36-year-old, soon to be 37-year-old Kevin Durant? Let me know down in the comments what you think. And as usual, I appreciate your support. And make sure you check out the next episode of Rocket Fuel Podcast.